Steve, preparing for trumpets. Good evening to everybody and good morning. And I don't think there's a good afternoon, but just in case, I'll throw that in. In all our time slots around the world, we all have different times at the same time. That's ironic. So today I'm going to speak about preparing for trumpets, and I'd like you to think about it as I go. This came about because I was speaking to Steve, and he was giving me his thoughts, and actually that's the title that he had. And as we were discussing it, I said, "Hey, Steve, you've got to give this. I like the discussion. I like what you're saying." And so, because I liked it so much, I took the title that he made up and that he was thinking of, and I put my thoughts to it as well, plus probably a few of his thoughts as we were speaking. So I give credit to Steve for putting the thoughts in my mind. Anyway, what do you mean? What do you mean preparing for trumpets? We prepare for Passover. We G11, take the leaven out, it's sin. We understand what it means year by year. And we prepare ourselves. We look within and we prepare beforehand, because as it says in 1 Corinthians 11:26, we are to take the Passover worthily, not unworthily. And so it's a serious, serious matter to be taken seriously. So what do we mean about preparing for trumpets? Interesting. Is there such a thing as preparing for trumpets? Well, anyway, we'll be talking as the time is drawing near for this season. We'll just cover the subject tonight a little. The first point I'm going to make is, let's look at the time and let's look at the vision. Let's go to Revelation 11. And let's briefly look at the condition to get into the mood of what happens at the return of Christ. Revelation 11, and we'll go to verse 15 will do. So Revelation 11 and verse 15, we're looking at the conditions that will be throughout the world when Christ returns. Then the seventh angel sounded his trumpet, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world at that time, it's declared, have become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Christ, and he shall reign into the ages of eternity. Now let's take note of what's said. It says the seventh or last trumpet at that time. But does it specifically say it's at the Feast of Trumpets? That is an assumption. It says at the last trumpet. And at this time comes the resurrection of the saints, because this is what is declared. Let's go to verse 16. And the 24 elders who sit before God on their thrones fell on their faces and worshipped God. Big deal occasion. Verse 17 saying, we give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, who is and who was and who is to come, for you have taken to yourself your great power and have reigned. Verse 18, for the nations were angry, and your wrath has come, and the time for the dead to be judged, and to give reward to your servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and to all basically different definitions or descriptions of one and the same group, those that are faithful to God, and to the saints, and to all those who fear your name, the small and the great. So this is a time for the saints to be rewarded. And then the last bit of that verse after that comes, and to destroy those who destroy the earth. Let's have another look at that in 1 Corinthians 15. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 51. So after the rewarding of the saints comes the destruction of the destroyers of the earth. 1 Corinthians 15:51. Let's focus in on the time of the rewarding of the faithful, though. What is actually said? 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 51. Behold, I show you a mystery. Let's get into the picture. Let's try and visualize this. And too bad that Hollywood is just not up to creating with all its technology and effects. How great would it be? How could they really do something to bring this, make it alive and make us truly visualize this scene? That we have our imaginations and the unseen thing, faith. So, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all fall asleep, but we shall be changed in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet shall sound. Okay. At this point, it says that the trumpet sounding is the signal for the dead to be resurrected and then rewarded. And the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Verse 53, for this corruptible must put on incorruptibility, and the mortal must put on immortality. Let's go to 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and get the complete picture, another description in considering this vision, or this occasion that is yet to come. And it's going to be at a particular time. Notice that that same thread goes through, the same signal. It's at the last trumpet. And I wonder, how do you prepare for trumpets? Just a thought that comes to mind. How do we prepare for trumpets? So what does it say here? It says specifically at the Feast of Trumpets, at that particular time. Well, no, it doesn't. It says at the last trump. It doesn't make any reference to a season or a holy day. The only connection is that there's the sounding of a trumpet. 1 Thessalonians 4 and verse 16. Because the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Verse 17. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them. Now let's visualize it. How? Well, by the reapers, the angels. It's a special spiritual harvest, and it's described in Matthew 13, verse 30, and again, verse 39. The angels are the reapers of this spiritual harvest. And we be caught up with them in the clouds for the meeting. Now, it's a meeting. We usually go past that word. It's a meeting. If someone is coming, for example, to an airport to visit you, you go and you meet them. You don't go and go with them. You meet them. Okay, so it's a meeting with the Lord in the air. So we shall always be with the Lord. And so we return with the Lord. That is the context, and we're always with the Lord. Now, just looking at the Greek of the word meet or meeting, it's the word enonthesis, and that basically means to go and to meet, and it's a meeting. So Christ actually comes to meet the team, everyone that has actually overcome. They've made it. They are now spirit. And the event now to take place is the rewarding of the saints. Now let's go to Luke 19. Luke 19, and we'll go to verse 12. So let's remember that the last part of Revelation 11:18 that we've gone through is the rewarding of the saints. Now here's an idea of the rewarding, what actually happens. Even though it's a parable, we understand what it's referring to. So Luke 19 and verse 12, therefore, he said, a certain nobleman went to a distant country to receive a kingdom for himself. And Christ received the kingdom and to return. And after calling 10 of his servants, he gave to them 10 pounds and said to them, trade until I come back. And it came to pass that when he returned after receiving the kingdom, and we'll go through that too, the inauguration and what actually happened, the celebrations, he directed that those servants to whom he had given the money be called to him in order that he might know what each one has gained by trading. And the first came up saying, Lord, your pound has gained 10 pounds, has produced 10 pounds. And verse 17, he then said to him, well done. Now, I always noticed the way it is written. Well done, good servant, because you were faithful in a very little. So he was faithful in the little, right? In the small things, will be faithful and trusted in the big things. That's the principle. It's another principle we'll also look at. He said, well done, good servant, because you were faithful in a very little, you shall have authority over 10 cities. And the second one came and said, Lord, your pound has gained 5 pounds. And then he said to this one, also said to this one, now what's missing? He just said, and you be over 5 cities. It's a praise, but the well done gave to the one, was given to the one, that comment was given to the one who produced more with the same of what he had or she had. Okay, let's go to Daniel 7 and verse 9. Now, the question comes to mind, how do you prepare for trumpets? You prepare for Passover, but how do you prepare for trumpets? Daniel 7, and we're going to go to verse 9. Now, the rewarding, as we've looked at, has to take place first, before the return to straighten out the mess. Daniel 7, verse 9. Now, I asked the question, was this a vision of when Christ was given his reward? And will the rewarding of the saints be a spectacular occasion that this one obviously looked to be? Daniel 7, verse 9. I watched until thrones were set in place. Now, again, Hollywood, they can produce so many, there's so much technology. Wow, could you imagine the scene? I watched until thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days sat, whose raiment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like flames of fire, and its wheels like burning fire. What is he describing? 10, verse 10, a stream of fire, this is raw, pulsating power. This is another dimension, another realm, the cause that has brought life wherever we see it. And this is the cause of life. This is the power that made life. This is the domain. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 1,000,000. And let's see, 1,000 ministered to him, and 10 times 10,000 stood before him. 100 million. The court sat, and the books were opened. And verse 13, we'll go to verse 13. I saw visions in the night, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. He was taken. They brought him. What kind of a procession? What kind of pomp? What kind of celebration? This is just a word. What is just? Oh, here he is. No, I don't see it in the earthly realm. We don't see that. Even in royalty, when there's a coronation, there's a tremendous ceremony. Brought before him, verse 14, and dominion and glory was given to him, singular, was given to him, and a kingdom. Then it was decreed that he had qualified. He'd overcome as I have overcome. That's the instruction he gives us, that all people, nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away. That is so incredible. We pass away. Whatever we see, it comes and goes. We come and go. Our loved ones come and go. But it says kingdoms, reigns, kings, presidents, they come and they go. But here, there's permanence. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away. And his kingdom, that which shall not be destroyed. So I guess I asked the question, will the rewarding of the saints, what will it be like? Will there be such pomp, ceremony, such a witness of many, many, many spiritual beings there as a testimony? Really, the first resurrection there's not that many going to be there in comparison to this great scene that is described. So it looks like there is much to look forward to. I mean, what kind of music, what kind of a procession? Think about it. Celebrations, proceedings. What's it going to be like? Anyway, so it is, again, it's interesting. The thought just comes to mind every now and then. How do we prepare for trumpets? Let's go to Jude 1. Jude 1. And my second point is the return scene. The scene when the return takes place. What's happening? Jude 1. Christ is to return to the earth with a ruling, faithful, trained, trusted team. Jude 1 and verse 14. It says, and Enoch, righteous Enoch, the seventh from Adam, also prophesied of these, proclaiming, behold. Now, this is what he said. This is what he proclaimed. And this is, again, what is reiterated here, a truth of an occasion that is going to come to pass. And what is that? Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his holy saints. So that is the occasion, is what's going to happen. Let's go to Matthew 24 and verse 21. There's going to be a time of trouble on the earth. There's going to be a time of confusion. It's going to be a time of world history and trouble that has never, ever been before. Matthew 24, and we go to verse 21. Now, by the way, you can note down that Daniel 12, verse 1 talks about the same situation in world events when Christ returns, and likewise Mark chapter 13, verses 19 to 20. They say the same thing as Matthew 24, verse 21. So Matthew 24, verse 21, for then there shall be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until this time, never before and never after, nor ever again shall be, or never ever shall be again. Verse 22. And if those days, it's going to be that bad. Events can suddenly take a turn at any time. You don't know the time or the hour. Everything can be right. We don't know. And really this makes me think it personally. I can get a little bit glum because of those that we love, our families. This is a reality. Verse 22, and if those days were not limited, there would be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, because of the training, because of the obedience of those that God calls, for that reason, right, those days shall be limited. And this will be a time when the last part of Revelation 8:11, verse 18 will be fulfilled. It's going to be a time, as it says in Revelation 11, verse 18, when the nations are angry. There is satanic activity, and Satan whips all these nations up again to fight against Christ. And it's okay. It's also the rewarding of the prophets and the people, but specifically this now comes to the point where Christ returns and to destroy those who destroy the earth. Isaiah 33. I'm going to ask, what is it going to be like? Isaiah 33. How do we prepare for trumpets? I think about it every now and then. How do we prepare for trumpets? So it's going to be a time I envisage like, what comes to mind is, personally, is Iwo Jima. You've got that famous photo of these what are the Marines or these US soldiers putting up the flag, to the flag of victory, that the invaders are here and they're going to basically take over the enemy, and the bullets are flying and there's smoke and there's trouble. That's more or less this satanic fury picture that comes to mind. The enemy doesn't just say, I give in, I give up. No, they fight to the last, shall we say, spiritual bullet. Interesting. Isaiah 33 verse 7. Let's look at this scene. Isaiah 33 verse 7. Behold, their mighty ones shall cry outside. The messengers of peace weep bitterly. And today we see efforts to bring peace and sanity. But here it says that the messengers of peace, the ambassadors, right, of peace, they weep bitterly. The highways lie waste. The traveller ceases. He has broken the covenant. He has despised the cities. He cared for no man. Verse 9, the earth mourns and languishes. Lebanon is ashamed. Sharon withers away like a wilderness, and Bashan and Carmel are shaking off their leaves. And what happens then? Verse 10, now I will arise, says the Lord. Now I will be exalted. Now I will lift myself up. Let's go back to Isaiah 24. We'll start in verse 17, and we'll get a little bit more of the scene of what it's going to be like on the return of Christ with the faithful team of his saints after they have been rewarded, coronated as kings and priests. Isaiah 24 and verse 17. You know, to clean things up, you've got to have a sure foundation to build on. Isaiah 24:17. Dread and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitant of the earth. And it shall be, he who flees from the sound of the dread shall fall into the pit, and he who comes out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are opened, and the foundations of the earth quake. The earth is broken, yea, broken down. The earth is crumbling. I mean, earthquakes, trouble, woe, yea, crumbling to pieces. The earth is tottering, yea, tottering. Emphasis after emphasis, like a drunkard. The earth is staggering, yea, staggering, and it rocks to and fro like a tree hut. We're looking at weather also gone mad in the midst of all this confusion. And its transgressions are heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day, at that specific time. We looked at a time of a trumpet blowing. And the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered as prisoners are gathered in the dungeon, and they shall be shut up in prison, and after many days they shall be punished. Then the moon, okay, the astronomical signs that we know about, the moon shall be confounded, and the sun shall be ashamed. For the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion, in Jerusalem and gloriously before his elders. My next point is that there's got to be a united house. There's got to be unity. There's got to be harmony in order to bring peace and restoration to a troubled civilization, to a troubled mankind, to basically undo the works of Satan. Let's go to Matthew 7. Matthew 7. So we need a united house. Matthew 7, if we start in verse 16. This is how we begin to build on a sure foundation. There are two indispensable elements here. One, a right beginning, and two, peace and harmony. Matthew 7 and verse 16. Here's a principle. You shall know them by their fruits. They do not gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles, do they? In the same way, every good tree produces good fruit, but a corrupt tree produces evil fruits. A good tree cannot produce evil fruit, nor can a corrupt tree produce good fruit. And let's go to Luke 11, verse 17, and I'll make comment on what we've just read. You ever think about this civilization and what it's headed for, the chaos and the destruction? Ever think about what God compares it to? Does he not compare it to a tree, the tree at the beginning of the knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life? So, in other words, this is the way that God speaks to us in simplicity. It compares the ways of living life to good and evil plants that produce good or evil fruit. The tree is used to denote a way of living, a way of life that produces results, one way and one the other way. The fruits are the results. There's either going to be suffering and hopelessness, or there's going to be hope, life, joy, expectation. Luke 11 and verse 17. Now, the other element that we spoke about is harmony. There's got to be harmony. Luke 11, verse 17. But he, knowing their thoughts, and here's the principle, said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against itself falls. Makes me think about, how do we prepare for trumpets? How is trumpets being prepared for by each and every individual? In Jude 14, we read that the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy saints. So what's going to happen? On Christ's return, there's going to be, we'll look at three different situations. It's going to be part of a good tree. Everyone that involved that returns is going to be have the elements of a good tree. And number two, it's going to be a part of a united house. Or number three, they won't be there. There's no other way. There's going to be unity and right beginnings. And let's go to Luke 16 now. Luke 16, and we'll start at the start, verse 1. Luke 16, verse 1. And I'll make a comment that in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 3, it describes Christ's way is one of simplicity. Satan's way is one of craftiness. Satan's way is simplicity. It's simple, but Satan is crafty. Luke 16 and verse 1. And he also said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and he was accused of wasting his master's goods. And after calling him, he said to him, what is this that I hear concerning you? Render an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. Simple story, communicating something profound. Verse 3, now the steward said within himself, what will I do? For my Lord is taking away my stewardship from me, and I'm not able to dig, and I'm not able to beg. Sorry, I'm not able to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, verse 4, he says, that when I have been removed from stewardship, when I'm finished, when the job's finished, they may receive me into their houses. So he works out a plan, and he then diligently executes that plan. And should we not also, in God's way, diligently execute a plan as is intimated and as is directed to us by Christ? You don't go there, but in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24 to 30, the Apostle Paul says, I don't just beat the air. I don't just play around. I play to win. I play to win. Run the race to win. You've got to win. You've got to succeed. And that doesn't mean that we do it haphazardly or just casually. It means that you put effort, heart, spirit, thought. It doesn't happen. You have to push yourself. No self-pity when difficulties happen. There's no room for that. You continually attack, advance, move forward. And it's not easy. Okay, so verse 5. After calling each one of his Lord's debtors, after calling each one of his Lord's debtors to him, he said to the first, how much do you owe my Lord? And he said, 100 baths of oil. And he said to him, take your bell, come here, sit down, quick, while no one's looking. You read between the lines. Write 50. Verse 7. And then to another, he said, and how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said, take your bill, quick, write 80. In other words, you owe me. In the ways of unrighteousness, he could work things out. In other words, it looks like he made his own superannuation here. Verse 8, and the Lord praised the unrighteous steward because he acted prudently here's the point, for the children of this world are more prudent in their own generation than the children of light. This generation knows how to do their things and their ways better than the children of light, better than those, the saints, those that are called. That's the point. So what's this got to do with preparing for trumpets, I think? I just asked the question. So verse 9, there are 2 points here that we should take care of. And I tell you, number 1, make friends for yourself by means of the mammon of unrighteousness. What do you mean? So that when you fail, when you die, when you expire, next point, they will receive you into age-lasting dwellings. Now, verse 10, here's a principle. The principle is the one who is faithful, even the little things, the glass of water is not forgotten. The little things, the one who is faithful in the things that are least is also faithful in much. The small things mean a big deal. And the one who is unrighteous in the things that are least is also unrighteous in much. Let's go back to Luke 14 and we'll go to verse 12. There's an example. Back to Luke 14 and we'll start at verse 12. There's an example here of how to apply the principle. And the first thing is how to make friends in verse 9 that we're talking about. Luke 14 verse 12. Let's look at what we get out of this one. And he also said to him who had invited him, when you make a dinner or a supper, do not call your friends, nor your brethren, nor your relatives, nor the rich neighbors, lest they invite you in return and recompense be made to you. The point is, when the recompense takes place. Verse 13, but when you make a feast, call the poor, call the crippled, call the lame, and call the blind. Now let's understand the principle here. It's not only applying to food and feeding, it applies to a way of life, to forgive, to overlook offences, to share, to cut slack. There's a wide variety of applications of the principle here. And I'll just note Matthew 5 and verse 45, you can just note that down. It says, so that you may be sons of your Father. And what does he do? Your Father in heaven, because he makes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends the rain to the just and the unjust, regardless. Verse 14, and you shall be blessed, for they do not have the means to repay you. You just give, you help, not wanting. The hardest thing, I think, is forgiveness. It is extending grace to someone that's just kicked you in the pants, that's pushed you the wrong way. This is talking about character, the character of those that will come back with Christ, that are resurrected. It says, and you shall be blessed, for they do not have the means to repay you. But when does a recompense take place? And how do both line up? You shall be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. Let's go to Matthew 25. Let's go to Matthew 25 now. You need to aggressively seek opportunities to do good, to forgive, to help, to guide, rather than to bristle, rather than to crunch. Obviously, we've got to be wise. You don't give that which is holy unto the dogs. But this is instruction to us, how we are to interact, to be a united house, to be the cause of the right tree that will bring the right fruit when they return, when we return, let's say it that way, with Christ. Matthew 25 and verse 37. Now, they are surprised, the righteous are surprised. We'll go to verse 37. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and gave you a drink? And I go back to the scripture that not even a glass of water shall be forgotten. If you give one of these little ones a glass of water, who is right in the small things will be right in the big deal. Verse 38, and when did we see you a stranger? All the occasions, and took you in, or naked and clothed you. Verse 39, and when did we see you sick or in prison and came to you? Verse 40, and answering the king shall say to them, truly, I say to you, inasmuch as you have done it to one of the least, when he talks about least, the least of my brethren, those that produce the least, in other words, the least character, the ones with the roughest edges, right? You've overlooked the problems, the difficulties that they obviously had. Everyone's at a different stage. One of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. That's a glass of water for someone who is very basic and uninformed, or as a child. How do we treat children? We love them. We know they've got a lot to learn. And that doesn't mean that we are not children as well in our conduct. And then the king shall say to those at his right hand, come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. The repayment. That's the repayment. Let's go to Matthew 7 and verse 1. Let's start at verse 1. Yeah, Christ will return with a team that's trained. But how do you prepare for trumpets? How do you prepare for that occasion? How do you? Matthew 7, verse 1. And you'll have to excuse me because I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm controlling it. I'm okay. Matthew 7, verse 1. We have an insight here of Christ's personal instructions. He was getting away from the crowds. When the crowds came and when he was set, his disciples came to him, they sat down and he taught them. He got away from the crowds. Matthew 7, verse 1. Do not condemn. This is Christ's specific instruction to those that would be in that first resurrection and that were to return with him to create order to this world after they had been rewarded. Do not condemn others, so that you yourself will not be condemned. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged, and with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. What you do is a boomerang. Would you like someone to have compassion, mercy, understanding? Would you like someone to overlook your stupidity? I say this to myself. You know, we're all off key sometimes. Wouldn't it be nice for someone to cut you a bit of slack? And to say, okay, don't worry about it. It doesn't stick. Now, continues to say, shall be measured again to you. Verse 3. Now, why do you look at the sliver that is in your brother's eye, but you do not perceive the beam that is in your own eye? When you begin to look first the other way at the other person, then your a sliver becomes a beam. Or how will you say to your brother, allow me to remove the sliver from your eye, and behold, there's a beam in your own eye? You hypocrite, verse 5. First, this is the instruction of Jesus Christ to you and to me. Do we jump off the handle? Do I? Well, I've got to say yes. We're not perfect, but we've got to look inside and adjust, control, think, do, follow the instruction. You hypocrite, first cast out the beam from your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the sliver from your brother's eye. Let's go to Luke 10. Luke 10 and verse 38. Let's go to Luke 10. But I'll continue to make comment. We need to become perfect. You know, we need to cut people slack. If we disagree, don't react straight away. Think on it. Whoa, count to 10, as the old saying goes. And think about it. Who is this person? Is this person, does this person have the spirit of Jesus Christ? You know, is it one of the lowliest of your brethren? Still Christ is there. Still you do it to him. You're not doing it to the individual. That's what you do it for. I remember the one time when Fred visited Australia, we were a little group sat together, and someone got a little bit heated about someone else who wasn't there. And you know what, Fred? He started to carry on. And Fred, I remember what he did. He said, shh, he both his hands, shh, easy, it's okay. And let's calm it down. We can talk calmly. And things calmed down. I thought, well, that stayed with me. You don't knock someone on the head. I mean, he's obviously wrong. But just easy, slow down. Let's think about this. Let's work it out. Luke 10 and verse 38. Here's an example that Christ gives us. Now it came to pass, Luke 10 verse 38, now it came to pass as they were going that he came to a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary who sat down at Jesus' feet, right? And was listening to his message. Verse 40. But Martha, she was busy. She was distracted because of much serving. And she came to Jesus and she said, is it of no concern to you that my sister has left me to serve alone? She's sitting on her backside. Just get up, help. She attacked her. Now then, speak to her, that she will help me. Can you imagine the occasion and the looks she would have given her? The sister had to sit down and she couldn't help. She had to take it in. She was drinking. This is an occasion that she was not going to have too often. And she was drinking it in, and Christ could see that. So, okay, how did he react? Is it of no concern to you that my sister has left me to serve alone? Now then, speak to her and she'll help me. You tell her. She created quite a scene, it looked like. Then Jesus answered and said to her, easy, easy, Martha, Martha, cut her slack. He didn't jump down her throat. She was obviously wrong. She didn't see the whole picture. But he was kind, soft, easy in the face of error. You're full of care and troubled about many things. But look, this is what's happening here. There is one need above all else. I know that's important, but this is more important. There's one need more above all else, and Mary has chosen a good part. She's just, the penny's dropped. She's just getting the point. She's at that point she needs to listen and take this in at this time, which has not been taken from her. Now, let's go to Luke 9 and verse 51. Luke 9, verse 51. It's about James and John. They were with Christ. They were with Christ. They walked with Christ. Now, they were instructed there. Imagine being personally instructed by Christ. Luke 9 and verse 51. Now it came to pass when the days were being fulfilled that he should be received up. And that's pretty much 3 years, at least 3 and a bit years that they were with him, that he steadfastly set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers before his face. And they went, and they came to a village of Samaritans to prepare for him. So what happened? But they did not receive him, because his face was as if it was going to Jerusalem. And seeing this, his disciples James and John said, Lord, will you have us call fire to come down from heaven and consume them as Elijah did? Well, Elijah did it. Why shouldn't we? But he turned and rebuked them. And he said, you don't understand of what spirit you are. Verse 56. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village. Now let's go to James 1 for some more specific instruction. James 1. You know, is it because we seek a daily close relationship with Christ and the Father, does that mean that we are to treat others as they did, like Samaritans? We're called. They're not. So how do we treat them? Do we call fire down? Do we have that attitude? This idiot. Do we cut people down? You know, we're given an example by Christ himself that even a Samaritan, he chose the outcast of the society that he was in. And even a Samaritan did better than the Levite and the priest. And I wonder, I asked a question. We're going to James 1. I wonder, we asked the question, how many Samaritan opportunities, I ask myself, have I missed out on? How many opportunities to do good, to give a glass of water? But bear in mind, you don't give what is holy to the dogs nor to swine, otherwise they'll trample it down and come after you. You've got to be discerning. You've got to be wise. So you've got to understand when you can act and when you should and when you should not. And, I wonder, the thought comes to mind, how do we prepare for trumpets? How do we prepare? Anyway, James got the picture. Let's go to James 1 and we'll go to verse 19. We'll just go through verse 19. For this reason, my beloved brethren, let every man be quick to hear. Again, count to 10. Slow to speak and slow to anger. Verse 20, because a man's wrath does not work out God's righteousness. Therefore, having rid yourself of all filthiness, take the sliver out of your own eye first. Having rid yourself of all filthiness and the abounding of wickedness around you, then in meekness accept for yourself the implanted word, the instruction, follow it, which is able to save your lives. In other words, take the sliver out of your eye. That's the instruction we're given. Same thing. Then there be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own souls. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, this one is like a man considering his own natural face in a mirror, who after looking at himself went away and immediately forgot what he was like. Do we read? Do we digest? Do we understand? And then we go back to the way we are. No, it's meant to change. It's information that we're given so that we can become different and not bristle or be upset or whatever, but we follow our master. Doesn't matter. He said to do it, I do it, regardless of what I think. Regardless of what I think is right. But the one who has looked into the perfect law of freedom and has continued in it, this one himself has not become a forgetful hearer, but is a doer of the word. This one, it says this, what does it say? It says this one shall be blessed in his actions. And if anyone amongst you consider himself to be righteous and does not control his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is vain. And again, as we've gone through in Matthew 25, the end of Matthew 25, same thing, same principle. It's said a different way. Verse 27, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans, widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world and cleansed, different, and having your eyes on character and on following the instruction. Okay, well, let's now conclude. And I wonder, have I talked about how to prepare for trumpets? I've been thinking about it, and I hope you've been thinking about it as well. Proverbs, let's go to Proverbs 25 and verse 28. Now, here's a principle. I like the Proverbs, and we get a lot of principles out of the Proverbs to be part of the team. Proverbs 25 and verse 28. What is necessary? Proverbs 25:28. He who has no rule, now I'm going to restate it in the other gender as well. She who has no rule over her own spirit is like a broken down city without a wall. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? It means that in those days, if you don't have a wall, if you don't have protection, you're open to raids. Anybody, if you have anything of value, well, there's no protection. You can be assaulted. You can be invaded. It's like today, I wonder if there's a nation without a defence force. I wonder if there's a nation without a police force. There's no repercussions. It's not that way. It doesn't work that way. So We are like scribes being trained for the kingdom. We are to learn to control, to receive God's Spirit. As it says in Luke 14, we're going to face situations where we don't have the wherewithal to solve the problem, to win, because we're going to have 10,000 worth and we're going to face a force with 20,000. So what does it mean? God has to make up the difference. We have to rely on God, on Christ, to develop that ability, that trust, to be able to make it. We don't repay evil with good. We're proactive and forceful in seeking what's right. Is it easy? Is it easy? No, I've talked to some individuals that, man, the difficulties they face. The only thing I can say is that I think I'm going to be your servant. I thought I had it hard. But, you know, life can really throw some curly ones at you, but you don't give up. You have to keep on going. And recently, we've heard, I think in the chat, someone mentioned that an elderly member died. Another lovely member that I was informed of in New Zealand, Eileen, has passed away. She's died as well. And another one before that in New Zealand had died. And now we probably have heard that the David Obey, who basically looked after the CBCG office for some 18 years in London, his wife Margaret has just died. And I thought about these things, and it was, let's see, the other night, well, I went to hospital myself because I've got this tooth, it's a sore tooth, it's pretty painful. But surprise, surprise, they said, you've got an irregular heartbeat. They had me down and all these cups over me and taking the ECG and so on. They give me a letter to go to the doctor. We don't know. We don't know the time of Christ's return. You don't know how long you have. We suddenly receive these surprises. Oh, someone has died. Wow. So the main focus is you. It's me. No one else is responsible for us, whether we're going to be there. So how do we prepare for trumpets? I'll just make a comment. Every day is our opportunity. Every single day. And we should take every day as if it is our last opportunity, for we know not the day of his coming. That's how we need to prepare for trumpets.